There's a ring around the earth where souls are trapped because they don't know where to go. Millions and millions of souls that have died. You're 80 years old, you're in the hospital, and you have dementia. You don't know who you are, where you came from. And I've discovered those people, if they're not retrieved by family members who have passed on, that they just simply don't know where to go. There are answers that are available, solutions that are available. Use your imagination and reach to them. You are not your belief. You are an eternal soul. You are more than who you think you are. Give yourself credit for being more than who you think you are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me, Kevin.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that.
Of course. So, as I understand it, you've had spiritual experiences throughout your lifetime. Have you had spiritual experiences since you were a child, or was there a specific point in your life where they began for you?
Well, when I was young, very young, I could see energy in different colors. And it presented to me in a geometric format, of which when I was 5, I used to lay in bed ready to go to sleep and reach out and manipulate the arrangement of these geometric forms.
Wow.
At 5, you don't know anything. It just seemed natural. And then these experiences of seeing continued, nothing really dramatic, just the usual weird looking shape that came in through the room. And once again, when you're young, you don't know any better. So I just, that's good. I like that. And this continued on through my later teens. I was fortunate to have a mother who was well versed in Theosophy, the Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, the people from that period of time who were involved in spiritual philosophy. This is what I call it now. It wasn't until I was 18 that I actually had an experience that went beyond the ordinary. And that experience was that I was a participant in a past life regression session by a hypnotist who was friends of the family. And something to keep in mind, at that point in time, nobody knew what that meant. There was no past life regression. There was no formalization of the process of digging into past lives. So we were all new to it. There was no direction, no format. And because he was a certified hypnotist, we said, let's start at the beginning. Start counting backwards from 100, which I laid down on the couch, the proverbial couch, and relaxed and started counting backwards. And I got to probably 92, 93, and I felt myself lift out of my body, which was very different than anything I had experienced before that. I lifted up through his house, up through the roof, and I was floating above his roof. And I was pulled towards my first past life experience, which was that of a Viking. And I was on a Viking ship. My brother was a captain. I was young, so he stuck me up on the mast. Kind of like, you can be the lookout, but I think it really was just stay out of trouble. Don't get yourself hurt. So I climbed up on the mast, and this ship engaged with another ship, which was fairly constant in that point in time where Vikings were roaming the seas. And a battle ensued, which I thought was great. I was cheering on my team, which were my people in the boat. And then I felt a thud in my chest. And I looked over, and there was a spear that went directly into my heart. And I died. I was kind of surprised, but then when death takes you, you're surprised. It doesn't really have much meaning. And what made this interesting, a little bit more than an experience that simply cannot be validated, was that I had a growth, and then a little growth in the skin in my chest, right above the heart. So I thought I would check it out. Is this a problem? Is this just a birthmark? So I went to the hospital. They did an X-ray, took a biopsy of that growth. And the doctor came back and said, well, you don't have cancer. You just have a birthmark. So I've always been entranced by the idea that where the spear entered my chest, I just happened to have a birthmark at that location. And I didn't discover what the birthmark was until I was in my 30s. And here I am experiencing this when I was 18. So probably, I don't know if you would say it was a spiritual experience, but it was an exceptional experience. Then after that point, I traveled through Greece, Crete, Turkey. I just felt compelled to go for a number of reasons that I found out later that I had lived in those places. I also found out about retrieving what I call energy shards, or pieces of energy that we jettison from our energetic body when we die. We're not burdened with the energy body anymore. We go directly into the soul experience, but what we do is we leave this element of ourselves behind. And I found out the more that I retrieved these pieces of the past, the more open I became to experiences, the more open I became in terms of my sensitivity to light and to energy and to other forms of consciousness.
That is fascinating, Kevin. So I have a few questions for you based on what you just shared there. First of all, those geometric shapes that appeared in your room, do you have any idea what those were?
No idea. They just showed up every night when it got dark and I'm laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and I was completely entertained by them. So there was definitely no critical analysis of what was happening. It was just fun. It kept me entertained and kept me quiet, which was a good thing.
And about your past life memory there, that's not the first time I've heard someone say that they have a birthmark on their body in this life, in the same place where they received an injury that caused their death in a previous life.
I think that's common, at least from my experience. When a person has a birthmark, they can usually correlate it with a past life experience if they're open to that. Yeah, I think that the lives that you have lived leave marks on the current version of you. And they happen, it's interesting that the recreation of events, usually deep emotional events, reflect themselves on your current body and your current sense, your current perceptions. It's like there are layers happening on you and under you, the past and the future. And because you're sensitized, you're part of a soul group that you pick up traces of those events. Like some people talk about, well, one day I woke up and I had lung problems and it went on for about 6 months. And the doctor said, I don't know what's happening. And then they go back into the past and find out, well, they worked in a coal mine or they were crop dusters and they ingested chemicals or something. Those are just examples.
Right.
So the things that we encounter in our current life that are unexplainable usually reflect an experience in the past or the future, because your soul is occurring all at once. It's like that movie, Everything All at Once. Everything that you are and have been and will be is occurring now with you.
Do you think there's any significance to, say, the birthmarks or physical difficulties that people may carry with them from another life? Do you think that it signifies maybe there's something in that life that we need to work on or resolve in this current life?
I think that is inevitable. All of us have had really good lives and really bad lives. And bad, I mean that we've damaged other people. We've done things that we don't like in our current life and we wouldn't even dream of doing. So I think that what I see from my experience is that there's a karmic carry forward into our current existence of the things that we have done in the past, whether they were good things or bad things. So if you were a soldier and you went around chopping people's heads off, or arms or legs, which often happens in a fight, particularly with edged weapons, that is very possible you'll come across something in your current life that is a karmic flow through from that past life. So I'm really, when very strange things happen to me, I'm not surprised at all. my thinking on that is that no, my body's just not degenerating and I'm not experiencing bad luck, so you could call it bad luck, but I'm recreating and paying through the experience of karma that was accrued in a previous life, as well as the good things.
Yeah, I love that. That's more of an empowering way to look at challenges that may come up because it gives us a chance to work on those issues.
What's interesting from my view is that when you pass through into the light, there's no judgment. None.
Mhm.
It's like your mentors and your guides and your higher self really turn to you and say, Kevin, what did you learn? They're more interested in the learning process than the actual events. And I think that is because everything gets smoothed out as your consciousness increases and expands. The bad things come home to roost as often as the expression is, and the good things, the carry forward things. So everyone who is a saint in this life may not have been a saint in the previous life.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that so many times. We've all been everything.
Yes. And the saint cannot be a saint unless he becomes bad, a bad person. Because there's no dichotomy. There's no balance in the experience of saintliness. It just doesn't ascend from the heavens and pop down on your head. The saints I have found are generally very sensitized to bad behavior, very sensitized to things that they have done to other people in their current life or the past life. And being a saint, in my view, is more like remedying the balance. Mm-hmm. Okay, you went off the deep end and now you're going to have to settle that out by being this kind of person in this kind of life, which is not always comfortable or attractive, but you need to balance it out. I really have an admiration for people that go through life in the middle. Like the guy at the post office who's always friendly and helpful, or the lady that I know over in the passport office is always wonderfully nice and helpful. And it's not fake. It's just who they are. They are balanced personalities. Those folks I admire a lot. Not the extraordinary behavior, but the assimilation of all things that they were into who they are now in a way that works for everybody.
Do you think they've gone through a lot to get to that point?
Oh, absolutely. Because keep in mind that we all start out as predators. When our first expression of consciousness was created, we came into this world not knowing anything. It was like a blank piece of paper that it was up to us to develop the story. And as we hit certain points in the uplift of our consciousness, we became more aware of the impact of our thoughts and actions.
Kevin, you've had, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you've had what you would call an out-of-body experience, or it was some kind of transcendent experience. Would you like to share that one with us?
Well, I've had a couple of those.
Okay, let's hear whatever you want to share.
Hey, let me think about that for a minute and see if it's safe for public consumption. I give an example of a recent event that I would definitely classify as out of body. A friend of mine's son had been in a cross-country bike accident and had a broken back. And his mother called me up, who I know, and said, "Can you do something?" And I didn't think I could. I've never really dealt with broken bones. Broken bones one time in the past, but not in the last 30 years or so. Broken bones are different. It's not like adjusting an energy field or helping someone recoup stamina or breaking a fiber. Those are more on a cellular level. Bones are bones. So I didn't think anything was going to happen. And I sat down in my favorite meditation chair. It's a little gray lazy boy that I have over in the corner. And I was yanked out of my body. I mean, literally yanked out of my body. It's like a giant fist just grabbed my chest and pulled me out, which is usually an indication of an out-of-body experience. It's not a smooth one, but you're still going out. Now, I ended up in a hospital room, looking down at a young man in a bed who was in a lot of pain, heavily medicated. Actually, he was on a death watch. They weren't sure he was going to survive the night. So I was fortunate to be able to assist him in many different ways. But the bottom of all of this was an awareness of myself, an awareness that I was free energy, that the energy body was free energy as opposed to locked up in a physical body. So that would be an example. This story is a little deeper than that, but I'm comfortable just mentioning that part.
Okay, wonderful. Are you comfortable sharing about the experience where you saw the ring around the earth where souls are trapped?
Yeah, that's a fairly common experience of people that have out-of-body experiences of go into the light, either in a death situation, near-death situation, or someone who is a sensitive, what I call sensitive. That there's a ring around the earth that I've noticed where souls are trapped because they don't know where to go. Think of it this way. You're 80 years old, you're in the hospital, and you have dementia or Alzheimer's. You don't know who you are, where you came from. You have no orientation at all. And I've discovered those people, if they're not retrieved by family members who have passed on, or in some special cases, angelic beings, that they just simply don't know where to go if they're not assisted through to the light. And what I've seen is that the earth literally has millions and millions of souls that have died in some event that stopped them from knowing where to go. Children, as an example, who don't have an orientation towards the spirit life, they're confused. Mom and dad never talked about what they should be doing if they died or had an accident or that they couldn't move. And older people, as I mentioned, victims of war. War can be very violent, very, very violent. And it can have a lot of bad things happen to you. So I think that what I call the ring of souls, to express that one way, is that our souls who don't know where to go, and they're stuck. Now, often when I've passed out into the experience of higher consciousness, I see them, and it's not good. It's not good at all.
Why do you think that there's so many souls that are trapped out there? Because it seems like most people would know somebody who's passed on who would be able to help them.
I think that's the vast majority have that experience. I think they're helped along to the light. But then if you take thousands of years of history and a small percentage of souls don't transition into light and they're stuck, that accumulates.
Yeah.
It becomes a greater and greater number of souls that are unable to pass on. And if they're not retrieved, if they're not brought into light, then there is nowhere to go.
Right.
What's interesting about that is that I've seen people that have died who are released into the light because the family gets through to them that all they have to do is ask to be redeemed of this place. And I say redeemed, it's not like someone is making a spiritual symbol over their head, but they themselves ask to move on. Imagine yourself in jail for 30 years and you start banging the bars with your cop and say, I want to get out of here. And they get tired of you and then let you go. It's because you initiated the request, you initiated the action for release. But generally speaking, a lot of these folks, they don't know where they are. They cannot articulate that immediately. It takes time. 53 million people a year die on this planet for various reasons. If some small percentage of them are not able to move into the light because they're guided into the light or a family member came to get them, where do they go? That's where they go, as far as I can tell.
Do you think that could account for some of the hellish near-death experiences that people have? And the reason I ask that is because most stories I've heard where people have a hellish experience, once they reach the place in their consciousness where they realize that all they have to do is ask for help, then somebody comes to help them, usually a Jesus figure or somebody, and they're taken out of that experience.
Well, remember, we are who we imagine. It could be a Buddha. It could be Muhammad. It could be Jesus. It could be a saint. It's really what we imagine the purity of spirit as one image that we're comfortable with. And the hellish experience, I find, is just simply a creation of ours, is we believe at some level that we're not going to go to heaven or something like that, or they weren't good enough, or we're not good enough. So they create an experience of punishment for themselves that is truly not even warranted. The spirit doesn't view us that way. Spirit views us with the generosity of love. But we as humans, we walk around with guilt, contradictions, convoluted thinking, and it's very difficult to achieve clarity when we pass. Unless, again, we're fortunate to have a family member or one of the guides yank us out. And it's literally a yank. Pull us out, retrieve us, hold us, and move us into the light.
So you've had experience with soul retrieval. Could you share with us what process you use to help souls escape from that place where they're trapped?
Well, what triggered this experience was pretty much what I'm been talking about. When I went out, I saw the souls that were trapped. And at first, I just ignored them. I mean, there's nothing I could do. It was a big mess. A lot of noise, a lot of holding on to me because they recognize that I'm free and they're not. And this went on for a long time. And then I don't know what happened. And I just started worrying about that. One day I woke up and I said, I got to do something about this. And I didn't know how to do anything about this. So once again, the controlling mechanism of our consciousness is our imagination. So I imagined the ability to retrieve the soul, which then became the reality of the retrieval. And you might sit back and say, well, how does he know that's real? Very simple. I asked for a person's name, identifiers. I asked for information that would help me connect them to a person that had passed. And I don't get that, then just kind of shrug my shoulder and do the retrieval, and I don't talk about it. If it's not verifiable, it's not worth talking about outside of that event. So it was just practice. It's like anything else. You become really good at something is because you practiced and practiced and practiced. And this was years of practice. Until finally, I realized that the only thing holding me back was me. That my soul, which is infinite and indestructible, immortal, as opposed to the body, was able to engage in this activity. And the soul doesn't engage in this activity while in a body, unless the soul is some extraordinary manifestation of spirit. So we learn how to retrieve. We learn how to do these things. I read books, nothing on the books, talk to people, no stories. It's like our attention is not in this area. We're enamored with the concept of having died, and then angels come down and they hold our hands and take us into the light. That's very attractive. It's also a very easy answer, because not everything is like that. So that's how I developed the skill to do this, was just practicing over the years.
Do you have any advice for people to keep from getting trapped once they leave the body?
Orient yourself to the light. Make that a living reality for yourself. And I'm not talking about a religious experience more than I'm talking about a spiritual experience. If heaven, and let's say heaven for the sake of convenience, is a place where we want to go as opposed to someplace else that we might not like, we're fully capable of visualizing and imagining where that place is and what it looks like. And to me, that's the spark, that's the impetus of moving into the light, because we believe at some level that we're able to do that. If you don't believe it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kevin, could you share with us the meditation experience that you had that led to your writing your book, The Pattern?
Well, the pattern is a 30-year project that was capped by an experience that I had a number of years ago. Whereas I was meditating and once again pulled out of my body, which is really a sure sign that something is happening because I can see the energy of self. And I saw kind of like in the sky, a grid, an energetic grid. And I love holograms. So this was like very interesting to me. And the closer I got, I started seeing specks of golden light that this information flow to me was, well, those are souls, billions and billions of souls that are highlighted within this grid. And I said, okay, I've read about that. And I kept moving into the grid and I saw the Milky Way galaxy spinning. And that's it. That was interesting because I checked later and that's actually what it looks like. And I kept going into the grid and going in. And that is the deeper I went into the grid, it became an extraordinarily emotional experience. I remember my eyes watering. I remember the high emotion of that experience. And the data kept flowing in from outside of myself to inside of myself, explaining that the pattern was put in place by the creator to assist the individual in their evolution of consciousness. I call it uplift, the uplift of consciousness from the very simple format that we come in when we're first created to the very complex higher levels of civilization and then the higher frequencies of energy and soul expression. People are generally just the basic form that is the prototype for our next step up into consciousness. But we don't have a format. We don't have guidelines that we think we don't have guidelines. And I found the pattern, which was put in place what I call by the creator. And I'm not quite clear who or what the creator is, just that it's there, was to give us the input and the impulse to move forward. I'm sure you've had points in your life where you just didn't know what to do. Some situation was so complex and so awful or something like that, that you really dug deep for inspiration on how to deal with it. And often we get an answer in the strangest times, in the strangest places, in the strangest ways. Dreams, meditation, then aha moments where we know what we know that needs to be done next. To me, that is really the mechanism of the pattern. Now, again, it was a very emotional experience and I couldn't talk about it. I mean, it's like you see those movies where someone's brainwashed and they can't talk about something. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't articulate it. It's just, I couldn't put my hand on a pen and put it down on a piece of paper or go to the computer and type it up. It was so incredibly impactful, but eventually that faded. And I was finishing the book, which I now call The Pattern. And my editor said, Kevin, you need to speak about this because it's the core value of the book, which then prompted me to start to articulate by writing about it. I still didn't want to talk about it. It was too emotional, but I could write about it. And that opened the door to just dealing with the whole experience. And when the book came out, I had very, very interesting things were happening with people who read the book. They saw the pattern. They had lived with the pattern. And frankly, I was a little jealous. It took me 30 years to see the pattern and they got it like right now. But the experience of the pattern pushed them into a higher space of self-awareness and expression of consciousness. To me, that's the inevitable result. And as we're pushed out, we say that consciousness is love. Love is the energy coin of the universe. Love is the power, the energy cell of the universe, because it is beneficent, it is embracing, it is encompassing, it's creative. It also is an element of growth, both physical and in consciousness. So I often look over, just go to the news. It's a little discouraging. We are capable of so much more than what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Which brings us to another topic that I've heard you speak about. In another interview, I heard you talking about how, with everything that's going on in the world today, that our thought patterns are what's trapping us into these experiences.
Oh, yeah. Well, basically your mind is a machine. Or you may not know that, but it's true. It's a machine. It's a mechanism that we construct from the moments of life through adulthood and older age to deal with the reality that we live with them. So as an example, you're in a small religious community in a small town, and there are 50, 100, 150 people that come to celebrate spirit. You start to conform to their belief systems. And you do that for survival and comfort. You don't want to be exercised. You don't want to be kicked out of that community because you don't get what the fundamental messages are. And you embed that in your psyche. You'll learn experiences in life like don't touch fire. Don't stick your finger in the electric plug. Those all become a part of your belief systems and how you can survive. We go to school as children. In kindergarten, we are told what to do and what not to do and how to do it. And as we get older, that sophistication of what to do and what not to do increases, and we put that in this frame of who we are. And there are many inputs to that. You see it in movies, you hear it in songs. Well, this is how you should love. This is a broken heart. This is grandma's truck, whatever it is. This is impact. This is actually pulled into your belief system. So who you are today is a result of your beliefs. You are not your belief. You are an eternal soul. Yet we believe that we are what we grew up with and we are what we were taught. And that's an assumption that what we grew up with and what we taught actually is real. So I talk about in the previous podcast about how the movement into spirit requires a setting aside of our belief systems that are holding us back. If spirituality is not a part of the construct of your psyche today, then you're probably not going to experience it until you are ready to move out of the box that contains you with your beliefs.
Thank you for explaining that, Kevin. Have you had any other, well, I know you've had lots of other spiritual experiences, but are there any others that stand out to you that you'd like to share?
I would say the thing that really stands out, and I think I've shared a bit about, is the soul retrieval.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, that's highly relevant to fully exercising my ability to express consciousness. So retrieving a child who died in violence or died abruptly or from an illness, pulling them into the light because they don't know where to go. To me, that's the highlight of my meditative spiritual experience.
That's beautiful.
And I've run across children that have died very badly and not necessarily in war. I mean, I've seen that some families are prone to abuse, to violence, and there's nowhere for a child to turn, nowhere for them to go because there's no system that will alleviate that or pull them from that because we just are not trained, that we don't believe that we should interfere with the family complex. So we let it go or we turn our heads and then something happens and then they pass and they don't know where to go.
Have you ever seen any other souls such as yourself helping with soul retrieval?
I ran across one in my explorations and it was like, yeah, they're pulling souls into the light. And we saw each other. It was a lady. She was in her mid 40s, early 50s, because it still had the characteristics of being human and wrapped around in being an energetic being. And we just kind of nodded to each other. Yeah. Yes. And went on with the work. So it's not something I see very often. Frankly, I don't think people engage in this process very often. because it's not a part of our fundamental belief system that we're capable of doing something like this.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't be very common for somebody that's in body to think that they could, to maybe even be aware that that needs to be done.
Once again, it's the limitations of imagination. Everything comes from imagination. Buildings, cars, inventions, medicines, they all come from someone's imagination. It wasn't a linear exploration that it helped them achieve that. They had the need to be imaginative and creative.
Right.
And it goes into spiritual work as well. There's no difference between a doctor helping his patient or a spiritual healer healing someone who has reached the limitations of traditional medicine or is not getting the relief that they need. Without the imagination to heal, there is no healing. Without the imagination to embrace being healed, there is no healing.
That's a really good point. A lot of times I think what happens is that people create like this mindset for themselves. I know because I've been there. I've had a lot of health issues over the years, and you get stuck in this mindset of identifying as a sick person. And it can be hard to break out of that and understand that in order to be healed, you have to see yourself as already being healed.
Well, unfortunately, we embrace being ill.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a badge of honor. Well, I'm sick. I've got a sore throat or I've got a headache, or it's like we embrace the illness. And I'll give an example of that. Many, many years ago, when I was more active in healing, a lady came in and she had a pinched nerve in her hip and she could hardly walk. I mean, she was trembling and stumbling. And we said, okay, we'll go through the process, lay down, go through your body. And this energy, I call it spiritual energy because that's what I'm used to saying. This energy came through me into her. It was a healing. They call it Reiki these days.
Yeah.
When I was young, there was no Reiki. So I call it spiritual healing. And she got up and the pain was gone. She was walking. And I looked at her and I should have kept my mouth shut. I said, do you realize that you're walking and there's no pain? And she got this look of horror on her face. And the pain came back.
Oh, no.
And she was back to hobbling. And then I realized that she had embraced the pain for various reasons, of which I knew the reason at that time. Her husband had been violently killed, and she found that it was some kind of shortage on her part that she wasn't there to protect him. So she embraced the problem in the hip one more time. So for just that brief 10 seconds, maybe less than a minute, there was no pain. It was intolerable. But she'd lived in pain for years. It's kind of like, where's my pain? Where did it go? Oh, that's not good. I'm missing some piece of myself. And then embracing the pain and bringing it back. So here was her opportunity to be healed of something that was just a pinched nerve, to being back to embracing the problem, the pinched nerve, not being released from the problem. And I've seen it again and again where people who believe they're healed are healed. The placebo effect is well known in medicine. 50% of the control group get the placebo. 50% of the balance of the group, they get the chemical active that's a part of the medicine. And they measure the two. And often the placebo effect is just as effective as the drug. You don't hear about that part too much. You make more money with a drug than you do a placebo.
Right. You would think they would be researching that.
Yeah.
But no.
The control group doesn't know that it was just filled with sugar or something.
Right.
They thought they were getting the medication and they were assured that it was going to be effective for them. And a good majority of that control group got better. What, from eating a capsule full of a pill that's sugar? You know, pop it in your mouth, tastes good, must be good. And oh, I'm okay now. And it was a lasting healing. It wasn't temporal. It wasn't 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. They were healed. People that have cancer go through these crazy diets and they become healed. But what does that diet yield them? They're available for healing. They don't believe in having cancer. No, I'm not saying it's the case for everyone, but I see it a lot. People that are healed from an incurable disease because they decided they needed to be healed. That's the power of who we are.
So, Kevin, do you have any advice for people who may be listening to what you're saying and wanting to change their thought patterns, whether it's in relation to their physical health or their mental health or our spiritual evolution, our planetary spiritual evolution? What would you say to somebody who wants to change their thought patterns so that they can start to reach their potential?
Well, over the years, I've developed a mantra. I repeat it in my head and I talk to people about it again and again. And it's very simple. Don't quit. You are more than who you think you are. You're capable of more than what you think you are capable of. Continue. Embrace change. Embrace growth. Don't quit. It will not occur if you quit. So I would say everyone is more than who they think they are. Vastly more. Because we're souls. We're spirits who are locked into bodies. And by the way, we're here because we chose to be here, not some fluke. We embrace this life, this family, this neighborhood, this situation, the relationships to learn something. Often you have stories about people that had a near-death experience and they went into the light and they were judged by some group of people, 5, 7, 2, whatever. And they recounted their life. And who they're really recounting their life to is themselves. Then they go back and talk about this. But now they know that they are more than who they thought they are. The world is more than we think it is. We have the gift of love and we just simply are not taught to embrace it. Look at the news. Look at what's going on in the world today. This is not a loving world these days. It's a dangerous place.
Kevin, would you like to share with the viewers where they can find you and anything you have going on that you'd like to share about? I know you've written a book. You also do painting, as one of your paintings is behind you that we can see there.
Well, I have a website that I encourage people to take a look at. It's info, the pattern, THE pattern, .pub, PUB is publisher. And there's also a Facebook page, The Pattern. You got to do a little digging because when you go to Facebook and you pull up The Pattern, you see like 5,000 different knitting skills and patterns for knitting and sewing. And you got to get past that. So my suggestion is The Pattern, Kevin Jeffers, takes you to the site. So currently we're capped out at over 5,000 friends, but we have a core group, actually a fairly large core group. They're always making comments and giving feedback when we do a post. And the posts are extracts from the book. So info.thepattern.pub, that'll at least, and we just redesigned it. I'm very happy with the results. Go there and take a look.
I'll have those links in the description. So I'll put that Facebook link in the description so people can just click on it.
Good.
Thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared with us today. Do you have any final words that you'd like to share before we leave?
Thanks for listening. And I just go back to what I said before. You are more than who you think you are. Give yourself credit for being more than who you think you are. There are answers that are available, solutions that are available. Use your imagination and reach to them.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and comment with your thoughts and opinions, and check the description box for the links to my free community where I share lots of resources, my Pay What You Can community where we do classes and challenges together, my TikTok, Instagram, my Clips channel, and lovecoveredlife.com where I share my paintings. Thank you so much for your support.